What's up? What's happening? Let's see if we remember how to do this. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we are streaming live on YouTube once again. When I'm out, so is the YouTube stream. But we are back in all of the places here on a Monday in the District of Columbia. Yep, we're back. We're whole. And oh, my God, you're not Anthony Haney. What's up, Vic Ferreira?
Hey, how's it going? Happy Monday, everyone.
Anthony will be back on Wednesday. Anthony and I now, Vic, have not seen each other in by the time we get back together in the same room, it will have been over 2 weeks.
Wow. Jeez, it might as well be the Replacements here the last 2 weeks.
I mean, it is a very funny movie.
I love that movie because, you know what? I was an extra in that.
Wait, what?
Well, so was about 40,000 other people, or maybe 15,000, because they filmed it at M&T Bank Stadium, and I was one of those 15,000 or so.
Well, what do you know? See, we didn't even. You made that reference because you knew that we'd get to that fact.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I was looking ahead.
Yeah, it's a good job by you. That really is one of my favorite. I'm not a big movie guy, but that is one of my favorites.
What's funny is I think I might have been, 10, 11 years old. So when I was there, I was kind of confused a little bit because they were running the same play for about an hour and a half on a flat play, and the guy was getting hit over and over and over. I was like, where's the actual game? I didn't know how they made a movie. I didn't know they spent an hour on one play.
Yeah, no, that's rough. And then your parents might not let you watch that movie?
At the time, no. But
You've seen it since.
But I've seen it many times, and I like to say I co-starred with Gene Hackman and Keanu Reeves.
Have you ever been able to find yourself in the crowd?
It's hard because I was behind the field goal in the east end zone, I believe.
Okay.
And I believe there is a certain scene where there's a row of fans that are, I think, actual actors potentially, because they kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. I might have been 4 or 5 rows. But I have not seen myself, and I think I might have been CGI'd to make it seem like there were 60,000 other people. So they took the group of 15,000 or so and then just pasted it around so I might be on there 5, 6 times.
Maybe if you look carefully, you can see multiple Vic Ferreiras.
I've tried. No luck.
No luck. All right. Well, that's fun. Vic, I feel refreshed. I would highly recommend if your job allows you at some point. We all have some form of PTO. I guess if you're hourly, it's if you don't work, then you don't get paid. That is kind of a pain. I've definitely lived that life. But if you work in a career where you have PTO, use it, kids. It's good for you. Feel good. Feel refreshed. Ready to go to Indianapolis tomorrow. Because the funny joke is, Vic, I am back in the saddle today, and then I leave again tomorrow. Now, I will be on the show tomorrow, and boy, do we have some shows planned for you while we are in Indianapolis. I will pull up the guest list to make sure I do not miss anybody in a moment. But I literally am in this literal chair for one day, and then I am back in a very nice airplane seat tomorrow, and then ultimately on a chair in Radio Row from Indianapolis. So looking forward to that. That is going to be great, and I guess this is the part of the show, Vic, where we just unleash on the people what is going to happen over the next couple of days.
Are you excited? Because to me, it feels weird. I'm missing some NFL. It hasn't sunk in that the NFL season is gone.
Why do you think that is? You get up Sunday morning and you're like...
I'm waiting for the Fox NFL pregame show. Oh, there's nothing on at noon. I guess it hasn't sunk in yet. It's been, 2 weeks since the Super Bowl? Am I right?
Yeah,
or is it a week?
This past Sunday was 2 weeks. There was a Sunday with no football, and then this is the second Sunday with no football. And then coming up this Sunday will be a third Sunday with no football, although there are workout drills. There is the combine on Sunday if you need to get a fix in of dudes who will eventually be NFL football players running around doing football-adjacent stuff.
But to me, usually after the Super Bowl, I think it's like a 2 or 3 week period before it sinks in for me, because you wait 2 weeks from the championship games to the Super Bowl. So this would be no different than me waiting 2 weeks from, quote, another game. So it's still painful right now that we have no football on Sundays.
So for me, I think it's not as bad because I do the pregame show all season. And then because the Commanders didn't sniff the playoffs, and on some level I couldn't wait for the misery just to be over. Like there was we were stuck in purgatory for 6 weeks where they were terrible, and we knew they were terrible. And especially after Sam's season went sideways, like we knew there was nothing worth watching other than, hey, tell me what happened at the end and what happened to the other teams that are also bad because, oh my God, they might wind up with the second pick. And turns out that was the case. But that's not like an exciting thing to watch unfold. So, and it's certainly not fun to do a pregame show that previews the game that nobody cares about.
Right.
So that was not my favorite way to spend Sunday mornings, as opposed to earlier in the season where it was one of my favorite ways to spend Sunday mornings because it was really exciting and people were genuinely jacked up for the games. So we have the pregame show end in January 8th, week 17. And then from there, it's like, for me, the season's over. Yeah, of course I watched all the playoff games and that was really fun and exciting. But like at that point, I know I'm getting weaned off of football. Like there wasn't, I guess if you spend every Sunday waiting for 1 o'clock watching and that's your rhythm, and instead of get up, go to a pregame show, watch postgame show, etc., I could see why that feels like more of quitting cold turkey, and why that's been shocking for you.
Yeah, I knew the season was over after the Chicago Bears game for the Commanders.
Well,
after that Thursday night game, so I already knew. Well, the season's over, so I've kind of already at that time adjusted to just watching generic NFL games and watching like the Pat Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, to where now I don't have that anymore. It's painful for me.
So what are you trying to do on your Sundays?
Well, here's the thing. I haven't played Madden football in like 15 years. And so to accommodate for that, it was actually free on Xbox Game Pass. I have that. And I was like, you know what? Let's fire up the Madden. And now that's how I'm getting my fix in. I'm playing as the Commanders, going week by week, and I already had a perfect season with Sam Howell, so I think you should be the quarterback next year.
Oh, well, that's clearly how we should make this decision. Yes. Someone get Adam Peters on the phone.
Yep.
What difficulty level are you playing?
Since I haven't played in solo, I have it on All Pro, which I believe is the second highest.
So, that's actually pretty impressive. Go all season undefeated.
Yeah. So I'm going to try all Madden for my second season.
Okay.
With Sam Howell as my quarterback.
Yeah, I've done similar things. I hadn't touched the PlayStation in a while until last week. Got some quality FIFA action in. Now going in my third season of career mode fourth season. 2 seasons at Wrexham, because of course I did. And I turned down much bigger money to leave Wrexham after the first season, but the money was so good after the second season that I went to the Bundesliga, and then I went to Arsenal, and I just started my first season in the Premier League as a 22-year-old striker who scores a lot of goals.
I haven't played FIFA, and so I think the last time I played FIFA...
Oh, sorry, it's not FIFA anymore.
It's not?
It's FC 24.
There you go. See,
which becomes important because they don't have the licensing agreement to the World Cup anymore. And so I did just lead the United States to the Men's International Cup.
That sounds huge. That should be breaking news.
Yeah, so that's part of how I spent my week.
Uh-huh.
But I also spent it, Victor, now that we've kept the people waiting, I also spent it booking guests for Indianapolis.
Really?
I did.
Are they big-time
I
guests?
did a little bit of work. Some would say they are some of the biggest guests in NFL media circles. So here's what we got tomorrow. Tomorrow's kind of our ESPN day. We got ESPN NFL Draft Insider Jordan Reed, ESPN NFL Draft Insider Matt Miller, both on the show tomorrow. We also have The Athletic, one of their lead draft insiders, Nick Bumgardner. We also have a roundtable of NFL media types, reporters, film nicks, etc. So far, we got one slot left that we got to confirm up, but it's going to be me, Brooke Pryor from ESPN, and Ben Solak from The Ringer. And what we're going to do, because I've always done this with my fitness podcast in Indy, because we tape a bunch of stuff on that side as well. And I was like, I'm so dumb. Why don't we do this? Because all the top trainers are in Indy. So we get a couple of them together, and everyone brings a topic, and we chop it up, and it's a great discussion. I was like, why don't we do that with the NFL? So me, Brooke, Ben, and TBD Slot 4 are going to all bring a different NFL topic to the table. Could be scheme, could be trends, could be ownership, could be coaching, could be players, whatever. We'll see what everybody brings, and we're all going to chop it up. So that's that. And then Sam Fortier, I believe, is also going to join the show tomorrow. Adam Peters' podium session at 11:30. I do believe we're carrying that live here on the Team 980. If not, we'll have bites on Sheehan's show and Russell's show right after. But Sam Fortier is going to join us as well. So that's loaded. That's day one. And by the way, there's probably other people that will wind up on the show. You ready for day two?
All right, hit me.
Day two. The show opens at 4 p.m. with Ian Rappaport.
Oh, nice.
We will also that day have, this is kind of our NFL Network day, Lance Zierlein. So if you go to NFL.com and you search any draft prospect, and there's the little write-up on that says, like, this is who this prospect is, the guy that writes those for every prospect on NFL.com, we've all read them, is Lance Zierlein. He's on the show. Charles Davis is on the show on Wednesday as well. I think I'm missing people, but those are the ones that are definitely locked in for Wednesday. And then we're actually taping some stuff on Thursday that will air on the show on Friday, including The Athletic's Nate Tice, NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, and more.
That's a great lineup.
So we are loaded, you might say. We actually got a pretty damn good lineup worth of guests today as well. Still to come on the Hoffman Show, Chase Hughes in less than 20 minutes as he's going to talk some Wizards with us. We're going to talk Wizards amongst ourselves next. Take some of your calls later in the hour. Some Wizards things I've been pondering on the last week, and obviously there's been a lot of things happening in Zardo's land. Coming up later in the show on Monday with Michael Phillips. We will also hear from NFL.com lead draft writer Eric Edholm to preview the NFL Combine. So we are loaded up, not just today, but all week long. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We'll talk Wizards with Chase Hughes coming up in just a few minutes. But we'll talk Wizards amongst ourselves now. And actually, Vic, I'm curious if this made your radar. When we last left our heroes, if you will, it was right before the All-Star break. And my last show that I did before leaving on vacation was after Deni Avdija had a couple nice games in a row. And I thought some folks, a very loud portion of Wizards Twitter, including like some podcasters and bloggers and other folks who talk into microphones, had gotten a little bit out over their skis on Deni Avdija. They were putting out, I mean, some of it was in good fun. Some of it, I think, was being a little too serious. But, we're Deni Avdija apologist forms and, all these this guy's amazing. He's a star. This is what happens when you give him opportunity. And I was like, y'all can relax. He's averaging 13.8 points a game. I really like Deni Avdija a lot as a player, and I think he could be very helpful and part of a winning team if he's the, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh guy on it. But let's stop pretending like this dude is some star in the making because he's had a nice 2 weeks. And then I went on vacation, and that night, but actually before I left for vacation, Thursday night, the last game before the All-Star break, Deni Avdija dropped 43 points. And I was like,
career high.
Well, actually, no, sorry. That was Wednesday. And I was able to do the show on Thursday and be like, guess what? Still doesn't really change anything. I don't know. Maybe he could be the third best player on a championship team instead of the fourth best. My bad. Well, obviously, when you go on vacation, there's no more content. I don't do the show when I'm on vacation. That's the point. And so for a week, I just watched my YouTube comments fill up and I'd get occasional shrapnel replies of Wizards fans because there's also, at that point, no more games. We have no new information. We have no new data. And lo and behold, we get back from the All-Star break. I'm still on vacation. And the Wizards play their first game. And first of all, Vic, did you see any of the back and forth? How locked into Wizards Twitter are you?
I'm not locked in.
Okay.
Not at all.
Because it became a thing. I was a character on Wizards Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, which is fun. And lo and behold, what do you know what Deni Avdija did in his first game back after the All-Star break?
What did he do?
He scored 5 points.
Oh, man.
On a miserable shooting night. Now he
against the champions, right?
Yeah, against the Nuggets. It was real bad. Yeah, got old nuggied by the Nuggets. Just rubbed it in. And you would think that would lead to me taking a victory lap, right?
Right.
But so this is my first show. This is my chance.
Okay.
Vic, prepare the parade for me. Prepare my victory lap.
All right.
Except for don't.
Oh, okay.
Because I think what happens is people want players to be on the extremes. They want players to be Patrick Mahomes or absolutely cannot play, bust, because then it's really easy, right? That dude's great. That dude sucks. It's an easier narrative than the vast majority of reality, which is it's really hard to be consistently great, and mediocrity doesn't look like 14 points and 4 rebounds every single night. It looks like 22 points and 8 rebounds some nights and 10 points and 2 rebounds the next. That fluctuation in play is something that messes with the narratives because it's not clean. It's not consistent. And so what I would tell anybody, and I very briefly got back onto Wizards Twitter. By the way, my only reply the morning after the Wizards game against the Nuggets, in which Deni Avdija had 5 points, was a hilarious tweet of someone reposting my segment where everyone is trying to cook me and going, y'all owe this man an apology. And to that guy, thank you. But what Deni Avdija is not is a budding superstar who's going to score 43 points on any kind of regular basis. We'll be lucky. Like, if you told me right now that Deni Avdija will retire in a decade and that 43 points will still be his career high, I'd probably take that bet. That's how, out of pocket in a great way. That doesn't mean we shouldn't celebrate it. Incredible game. But if Deni Avdija goes and scores 44 points in a game in the future, bravo. But he might score 40 once a season. Maybe. It's really hard to score 40 points. Easier now than it's ever been in a season where scoring is at an all-time high. But very, very difficult, very impressive. He's not going to do it regularly. He's not going to score 30 regularly. 20, maybe. But this dude averages 13 points per game. And what that realistically means is he's not 43-point Deni, but he's also not 5-point Deni. He is simultaneously neither of those players and both of those players. He's just going to be inconsistent. And I think the hope is that he gets more consistent as he gets older. And for me, what I would want from Deni Avdija if I'm this front office is someone who reliably defends at a high level, averages between 16 and 18 points per game, hopefully 7 or 8 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, doesn't turn it over, shoots 37% from 3. He's shooting an outrageously high number this year, which is awesome. If Deni Avdija turns into a 40% three-point shooter, then incredible. But he's realistically, if he settles into like 37 for his career, like I'm very happy with that. And I think wanting more of that is setting yourself up to be disappointed, and planning on more of that would be asinine, which I think gets to my last thing, which is when a lot of fans are like, why are you putting a ceiling on his potential? Because their counterpoints, to acknowledge them, which are fair enough, is that, you know, with Hughes out there, with Poole out there, like he doesn't get the opportunities. And it's like, okay, Kyle was out one game and he has 43. Like, don't you think that if they thought he was capable of that on a regular basis, then he would be out there a lot more and the offense would flow through him? You don't think these coaches or that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins like know what they're looking at when they watch these dudes in practice? Like, come on. But, oh, now I've lost my train of thought. Vic, where was I? Pick me up.
Talking about Deni Avdija's ceiling.
Yes, the ceiling.
Which I have something from Bullets Forever. They posted a poll, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah, no, I am intrigued in the Bullets Forever poll. But I think that when you're talking about a player's ceiling, first of all, I have no control over a ceiling. I have no control over anything. I am a guy who talks into a microphone.
Oh.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry for that hurt your ears, Vic.
Yeah.
Oh,
We've had this conversation before about my ears.
Oh,
it hurts.
They're very
Tinnitus.
sensitive.
Yeah, sensitive.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm a usual radio guy whose hearing is probably going as we speak. Tap, tap. Very nice on the microphone for Vic. I'm a guy who talks into a microphone. I give my opinions for 3 hours a day. I have no control over anything. But as a franchise, if you plan on him reaching a ceiling that is higher than what is actually going to happen, then you plan differently. You draft differently. You sign free agents differently. You give opportunities and distribute them differently. And that's a very silly thing to do because then you wind up coming up short. So that's why it matters. What did the Bullets Forever poll say?
Yeah, they asked, what is Deni Avdija's NBA ceiling? You have 3 choices. You could choose a solid playoff starter, an all-star, or he is close to his peak now. Which of those 3 would you vote?
I would say he's a solid playoff starter.
Solid playoff starter, then you are in the majority. 54% say that he is a solid playoff starter. 37 at All-Star, and 9% say he's close to his peak right now.
That 37% needs to watch other NBA teams.
Well, they're only Wizard fans, so who knows? Maybe they just watch Wizards.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this in the break, and then we're going to have Chase Hughes on to talk about Deni and Jordan Poole, who's looked like a totally different player coming off the bench post-All-Star break. But here's what I'm going to do in the break. I'm going to look up Deni Avdija's stats as they stand right now for this year, and I'm going to see how many players, points, rebounds, assists have them. I'm going to guess there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So All-Star, no. I think Deni Avdija's level of player, no disrespect, very, very good, but is much more dime a dozen in the NBA. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We'll talk about all of this with Chase Hughes next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and it is our pleasure to welcome back to the show our buddy Chase Hughes from Monumental Sports. You read him on their website. You see him on your television. There's so many places to get Chase Hughes content, and one more is right here on this radio show. What's up, Chase?
Not much, man. It's great to be back on with you.
Always great to have you. So we were talking about Deni Avdija in the last segment, and there is a lot of obviously Deni Avdija ceiling talk these days because of the 43-point game that he had right before the All-Star break, and he had a really, really good 2-week stretch before the break. As you talk to folks around the team and kind of watch with your own eyes the development of Deni this year, like where do you see him as a player right now, and how much more room to grow is there through your eyes with him?
Well, I see a guy who's made a pretty big leap this year. Obviously scoring more points, doing more in a volume sense than he has the first 3 years of his career, but also just becoming a more reliable three-point shooter and a better rebounder. He's become one of the best rebounders on the team. And I asked interim coach Brian Keefe about him yesterday, just his offensive versatility. And he said that he thinks a lot of it just starts with getting defensive rebounds and taking the ball up the court. So I think the big reason why a lot of things have been unlocked for him this year is that the Wizards are playing faster. They've been up near the top of the league in pace all year. And it just really suits Deni's strengths because he's really good in transition. He's big, he can handle the ball, he's fast, and he's starting to recognize when he can take advantage of physical mismatches, especially in open space. So as far as his ceiling, I think it's probably being raised in a lot of people's eyes. And I think moving forward, especially if the Wizards are playing this style, then I think he could be at a minimum, a rotation player, probably a starter on a good team. Like when the Wizards are ready to contend for the playoffs, I think he could be a key contributor on that type of team.
So you and I think, are very much on the same page here, which is we say many nice things and then we land on he's a rotation player, like a very good one potentially, but this is not someone that I see as a future superstar, and yet there's a very loud portion of Wizards Twitter and the Wizards fan base that I think gets carried away with the 2 weeks and the 43 points. And I would be quick to point out, by the way, that the 5 points he had in the one game post All-Star break before getting hurt, that's not who he is either. He's just somewhere in between. So like if we think about realistically what that rotation player looks like, that kind of finished version, as much as any NBA player ever is, of Deni Avdija, like what does that look like statistically in your mind?
Well, if he ends up becoming a starter on a playoff team or like a really good team, then that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, you
Right.
mentioned being a superstar. There's only a handful of those guys in the league. It's really, really hard to become that good. But for Deni, I mean, I think obviously being a scoring threat in transition, now he can make threes. I think that the key will be having the same impact that he does in transition in the court. They've run him off a lot more pick and rolls this year, a lot more frequently than we saw the first 3 years. And, he's got to, continue to get better at tightening his handle and protecting the ball. But he's on the right track. And, he's a good rebounder, as I mentioned. We haven't really talked about his defense, but anyone who's watched him over the last few years knows that, he's a very versatile and gifted defender. I think the more help the Wizards can get for him and guys like Bilal Coulibaly, that they're better defenders, the more help they can get on that end of the floor, the more it'll simplify things for a guy like Deni. And, he won't be left on an island against some of the best players in the league. He'll have, help in terms of help defense and also rim protectors behind him. But I think a two-way player who can rebound and can be uniquely good in transition and a starter on a playoff team, if he ends up being that, then he'll be well worth the 9th overall pick.
Without a doubt, and I think he's also the kind of guy that can win you a playoff game. Like the best example is unfortunately terribly heartbreaking for the Wizards because I think of the Kelly Olynyk game. And I think of how, back in 2016, that dude was a role player, won a playoff game for the Celtics and wound up winning them a series. I think Deni Avdija with his skill set could absolutely be that kind of guy that wins you a playoff game. I don't say single-handedly, but with an outsized type of impact. And I think that's a super valuable piece to have. You mentioned Brian Keefe. What have you made of how there's some of the changes, big macro size changes that the Wizards have made since Keefe took over, outside of Jordan Poole, who we'll talk about separately in a moment?
Yeah, I'll start on the offensive end. I know he's talked a lot about defense, but one discernible difference has definitely been the amount of threes that the Wizards are attempting. Coming out of the All-Star break, they'd been like 7th in the league in total threes attempted over the previous month since Keith had taken over. And, they took 40 last night, and they're not necessarily shooting like that efficiently. Like during this stretch, they've had a couple games where they've shot sub 30% from three, but they're making a lot of threes. In the 4 games leading up to the All-Star break, they tied a franchise record making 23s, and then a couple games later, they set a new record making 21. So that's been one difference. Defensively, they've kind of regressed lately, but for the most part, they've been better. And, when you ask the players what's been different, they say that they're trusting each other a lot more in isolation defense. They're not doing as much help defense. And I think it's simplified things where you're not having as much miscommunication on switches. So that's been different. And then in general, you hear from players all the time that Brian Keefe is like very direct, very blunt when it comes to holding people accountable. And we've noticed that a little bit, like in the media, like sometimes, he'll kind of give it back to us a little bit. He's just kind of a no nonsense guy. Like he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you what he thinks. And as Johnny Davis told us last night, sometimes it'll be in front of the entire group. Well, he'll be like, you're not doing this well enough. You got to be better at it. And I think that's the type of accountability the Wizards are searching for right now.
Chase Hughes, of course, Monumental Sports, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So before we get to Poole, and that's how we'll wrap up our chat here, I'm going to ask you the biggest macro size question I can. So big, Chase, that as we stream on YouTube, this is the question that's on the graphic. Are the Wizards showing improvement despite the fact that they have lost 11 games in a row? Because the vibes are good, the results are bad. Trying to make sense of that. Are the Wizards improving despite the results of the last 11 games?
I think they are because the young guys have taken steps forward this year. I think whatever they end up with, however many wins at the end of the season, if the progress continues for Deni, Avdija, and Corey Kispert, you're going to feel good about that. Bilal Coulibaly has, obviously dealt with what all rookies deal with, which is just the tonnage of games. Like you get to a point where I think all these young guys just get tired as they're adjusting to playing an 82-game season. So, call it the rookie wall, call it whatever you want. Right now, obviously, he's hurt. As long as he continues to have a successful rookie season, you'll feel good about that. So I think those are the things that the Wizards will hang their hat on at the end of the year. Now, over these last 25 games, if they can get back to playing the defense they were kind of leading up to the All-Star break, where over about a month, going back to January 9th, up until the All-Star break, they were a top 10 defense. I think they'll feel a lot better about that. They made progress last night against Cleveland, but, going up against Oklahoma City and Denver and giving up 130 plus, that's certainly not what they're looking for.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they had, until those recent blowouts, been pretty competitive during this streak in a way that they hadn't been previously under Wes Unseld, which obviously, as much as we all love Wes, was the reason why he ultimately is no longer the head coach of the team. All right, then there is Jordan Poole, who is obviously an important part of this rebuild to try to recoup his value, if you will, after a miserable start to his Wizards career. He wasn't particularly thrilled, it seemed, about being moved to the bench, but he has responded by having great performances offensively, including a season-high 31 last night against Cleveland in the loss. Like, what have you made of Jordan Poole's post All-Star resurgence here? Is it the break? Is it the role? Like what are the factors here?
I think the role has a lot to do with it. He was in good spirits last night. It was like the first time that we really saw a breakthrough from this new role. Like the first 2 games, he scored a decent amount of points, but it wasn't exactly efficient. And last night, it really kind of peaked in the fourth quarter. He had 11 points in the first 3 minutes, made 3 threes, and was really kind of feeling it and kind of interacting with the crowd. 2 things on the role. I think one, it helps any player to go to the second unit and then all of a sudden be facing backups. Like it's a completely different dynamic when you're going up against second units compared to starters. But perhaps more importantly, he gets to play more on the ball than he had previously this season. And I didn't really realize it just how much he'd been playing off the ball, or at least as a shooting guard, until I looked at the position estimate that Basketball Reference has, which isn't an exact science, but they had him as a shooting guard 83% of the time this year leading up to the All-Star break. And that was by far the most that he's played as a shooting guard in his career. Like, looking back at his time in Golden State, he was actually a starter more often than he was coming off the bench. But he played a lot of point guard in Golden State, way more than I thought he did. And they ran a lot of pick and rolls with him last year. It was something like over 400 pick and rolls, which is a lot. Like, it was more than like Bradley Beal and Monte Morris did combined last season, and
Wow.
two guys who ran a lot of them for the Wizards. So they're going to run a lot of pick and rolls with him. He's the point guard. Johnny Davis, as of now, is the shooting guard in that second unit. He's only focused on defense. So it's really kind of like up to Jordan Poole to get going offensively. And I thought we saw a step forward last night. And he talked about it after the game about how he's playing much more on the ball than he had earlier this season. So I think he's adapting to that role, and we'll see the positives in it over time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the thing that I think blew my mind earlier this year, Chase, is I just kept looking at the field goal attempts and being like, this is not enough. Like, this dude's got to shoot more. And I don't know whether it's putting the ball in his hands, it's whether it's taking him or giving him more minutes where Kyle is not on the floor, because obviously Kyle's got high usage. It's not a criticism. It's just like, he's the best player on the team. He should have high usage, but that means less possessions available for other guys. So when he's on the bench, if all of a sudden JP's the guy, then he's going to get the ball more. And to me, that's the most encouraging thing. The results are great, but the fact that he's actually shooting again makes it feel like, oh yeah, like I recognize that guy. That's Jordan Poole.
Yeah. I mean, just talking about putting him on the bench as opposed to the starting lineup. Tyus Jones also has to get his shots, and when you put Jordan Poole at the 2 combined with Tyus, and it's a little undersized as a backcourt, and also when Jordan Poole is the 2, he doesn't really have a physical advantage over many of the guys guarding him at that spot. But if you put him at the 1, he's 6'4", he's fast. He can find some mismatches at that spot, even though point guards are obviously bigger now than they've ever been. And I just like the idea of having Johnny Davis out there too, just to focus on defense. It's like you don't really have to share the ball as often with, a guy like Tyus Jones. He can just kind of go run the offense, and they surround him with shooters. The Wizards have a lot of shooters in their second unit, of course, highlighted by Corey Kispert. So it does make sense. Like, the reasoning makes sense, but of course it's up to Jordan Poole to figure it out on his own.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, you working on any? I always like to ask you this because you write some crazy cool stories sometimes. Anything in particular you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I'm working on a story on Corey Kispert's pregame shooting routine,
Ooh.
like specifically where he shoots from, how many shots he takes, and talking to other players about it. So I filmed his whole pregame shooting routine last night, and I got to go through it and chart it by the numbers. But I talked to him and got some ins and outs of it. I think it's going to be a pretty cool story.
That is awesome. That is good stuff. I'm excited to read that.
Appreciate it.
Chase Hughes, always writing interesting stuff on Monumental Sports website. And then, of course, an active participant in their pre- and post-game shows, halftime as well. Sometimes even joining the game broadcast. He's a versatile man. Chase, always appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thanks. Anytime.
All right, that is Chase Hughes from Monumental Sports. Quick look at what's trending, and then we'll react to some of the Jordan Poole stuff to close out the hour next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope you're having a great start to your week here on a Monday. Again, we are in studio today, and then we're on the road again. On the road again. On the road. Okay. You get the point. We're off to Indianapolis tomorrow. The show is live Tuesday and Wednesday from Radio Row. And actually, Vic, I'm going to pull back the curtain the whole way here. We were hoping to have our pal J.I. Hallsell on the show today to talk NFL salary cap. We're going to talk it amongst ourselves, how we want to spend some of this Commanders cap money in the next hour of the show. But we are, and he can't do it today because he's getting ready to travel to Indy. So instead, we're going to have him on the show in Indy on Wednesday.
Sounds like a good idea. I like it.
Pretty good backup plan right there. I'm pretty pumped about that. So add him to the excellent guest list on Wednesday. Again, that starts with Ian Rappaport, NFL Network's lead insider, joins us to start the show Wednesday on Radio Row. Then we also have Charles Davis, Lance Zierlein, now J.I. Hallsell. We'll see who else pops by. Siciliano always winds up on the show. Good chance he's on Wednesday.
Nice.
So we'll see what we do there.
By the way, what about Indianapolis just being the hotbed right now in the last couple of weeks where all the sports landscape is? You had the NBA All-Star Weekend. You have the Combine. I mean, the Pacers are pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think we actually might be going to the Pacers game on Wednesday night. Pretty pumped about that.
Life goes through there now.
Yeah, I will say this. Indy, if people, is it the place I want to go in February? Typically, no. I've had some very cold combines. It is supposed to be very nice this week, though. It's going to be in the 60s the next 2 days. I'm going to go run outside. Pretty pumped about that. I thought I was going to have to do some running on the treadmill. No. Your boy's going outdoors.
Nice.
Outdoors. But it's a very cool city for big events because all the major hotels are connected, and they're all connected to the convention center. So, if you're staying at one of the major hotels, you can walk indoors through tunnels to the convention center, which also connects to the mall. They let out right by, I'm not staying at one of the major hotels. We wanted a little bit more space, so we went to a suites place that's right off of that. But I can walk out of the tunnel, walk across the street, and be in my hotel. And some of the main restaurants and stuff. It's a very compact downtown, so it's actually a great place for big events. I never would have thought I'd be on the radio one day being like, Indianapolis is great. But it honestly, for stuff like this, it's really for a Final Four, I would love it to be in Indy. For the Combine, it's great. So it's
What about food? How's the food?
The food is fine.
Just average?
Yeah,
right.
Indy's kind of known for steakhouses. There are some very nice steakhouses. Obviously, you go to St. Elmo's or their sister restaurant, Harry and Izzy's. That's the pro move. It's the same shrimp cocktail for the shrimp cocktail. Actually, it's really the amateur move because it's less expensive and it's literally the same kitchen. The point is, it's good. If you want a better food city, it's pretty easy to find. There's not a lot of great restaurants. There are some good ones, but not as many as we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl. Ate better in Vegas than I'll eat in Indianapolis.
But did we ever get your thoughts on the NBA All-Star? Because
No.
you were out, right?
No.
What'd you think of it? Quick.
Talk about Jordan Poole here, but we can talk about this instead and go back to Poole in the next hour. We take a bunch of calls in the next hour as well. Pretty pumped about that. And then we got some great guests coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. I think the NBA needs to do something. And I have been someone for years who has said people need to get over the All-Star game being this offensive pickup run. Because it's kind of I always kind of have fun watching it because I'm like, you know what? We all understand what it is. And when people say they don't play defense in the NBA, no. This is what it would look like if they don't play defense in the NBA. This is how good these guys are. The reminder of how insanely talented these men are is I think refreshing in a way. However, when you have players outright saying, I don't care, in the way that Anthony Edwards did, in the way that Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic have, when there is not even a fake competitiveness happening, I think you have a problem. And it sucks because these guys do play pickup in the offseason. Like, the kind of running joke in NBA circles is like, if you want to see a competitive all-star game, go to the pickup run at UCLA in the offseason or at Chris Brickley's gym in New York, and you'll see these same guys going at each other's throats. And yet you put it on national television in what's supposed to be one of the great honors of your career, and you guys can't even pretend to try. Yeah. Like, I hate that. I hate that for the fans. I hate that for us. Like, because the idea of an all-star game is really cool. Like, let's get the best players on the court and see what happens. And it used to be something where you could kind of see who the alphas were. Like, I even remember when some of the younger, like, generation all-stars, like the Westbrooks and the Hardens, were starting to emerge a little bit. And you go to the all-star game, and Carmelo Anthony would destroy them. And you're like, oh, they're still not there yet. Like, you see the power of some of the veteran, like, more developed players, and like you see the difference right there in front of your eyes. Nevertheless, a guy like LeBron. So I love the idea of an all-star game if you get remotely what it's supposed to be, but I think the NBA needs to do something, and I think there's some good options out there, one of which is just paying the guys in the same way that you do the in-season tournament. Like, that seemed to work. The guys seem to care about it. But I think there's probably some other things that they can try too. But
just watch the All-Star game in the 90s. Like, I was watching Jordan, like, going one-on-one against Tracy McGrady. Like, first quarters were ending like 20-19. Like, they were legitimately playing defense and like as if it was Game 7. So just go back and watch All-Star games in the 90s and early 2000s.
One take that you ready for this sentence, Vic? This is something you probably don't anticipate hearing from me, and I would say don't anticipate hearing it from me very often. But you know whose take I loved on part of All-Star Weekend?
Yeah.
Was Stephen A. When he was like, you know who killed the dunk contest? LeBron.
Yeah.
Because he's right. LeBron never did it. Like, all of the stars, the Jordans, the Kobes, everyone before him did it. Mm-hmm. All the high flyers. He didn't. It was a little bit of like, I'm too cool for that. And like, dudes don't get hurt in the dunk contest. So the injury thing to me was always overplayed. And credit to Jaylen Brown for trying to bring it back. But Jaylen Brown's, a B-level superstar, all due respect. I would love to be a B-level NBA superstar. But, he's not Jason Tatum, his teammate. He's not, LeBron. He's not Steph. He's not whatever. But I think what happened is, like, LeBron treated the dunk contest that way, and then everyone else treated the entire weekend that way. And it's like, come on, guys. Mm-hmm. Come on. All right, when we get back, Michael Phillips joins us. It's a Monday, and Michael texted me. He's like, hey, are we still doing Mondays? And I was like, you know what? There's stuff to talk about. Let's do a Monday. Michael Phillips with us next. NFL salary cap, a record increase. Does that help or hurt the Commanders? Michael will give his take next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are off to Indianapolis tomorrow to sit down with a star-studded guest list on Tuesday and Wednesday. But in the here and now, speaking of star-studded, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
That's right. The star of stars on this show, Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond. Michael, we've had so many vacations and moving parts and things. I don't even remember the last time I talked to you.
It's been a minute here, that's for sure. But I think that just means we have so much more ground to cover, so much more to discuss, so much more fun to have.
So what do you think about them hiring Dan Quinn? No, I'm just kidding. That's too far back in the rewind.
You know
machine.
what? We are still litigating Sam Howell, though. I mean, the more things change.
Ooh, yeah, well, I don't know if I'm touching that one today. I do think it is interesting. Here's how I will touch this today, and I will let you respond, and then we'll get into the substance of what I would like to talk about on more pressing news. But it does feel like that random aggregator blog account no one has heard of. And I don't say that to be demeaning to actual people who do work. I mean literally someone who is making something up out of nowhere, tweets a thing, heard reports, saw reports, not I have heard actual information, not I know anything, not I know anyone, just Jeff on the block says that teams are interested in Sam Howell. They put that. People start to retweet it. Enough people retweet it that it gets in the hands of like actual media folks who then comment on it. And then it becomes a story that literally got created out of nowhere. And like the Sam Howell thing feels like that. I never saw the original report. Was there anyone who actually does reporting that reported this?
Nobody does reporting anymore. We, the media, need to do a better job of not falling for the blue check mark brigade because they're very organized, very good at what they do. What bothers me more with Sam Howell is the people who are saying give him another year, like draft an offensive lineman and build around him. Like I've seen enough to render a verdict here. I don't think that makes me some sort of like crazy, like guy who gives up on players too early. Like you got a chance to get a quarterback at number 2, get a quarterback at number 2.
Yeah, or fall in love with J.J. McCarthy, absolutely wreck the Falcons with a fake trade that I saw on Twitter this weekend that somebody made up that was completely and totally fair and not biased at all towards the Commanders, and then and then take him, and also get their first round pick next year and stuff. All right, Michael, here's what I actually want to talk about. The salary cap comes out late in the week last week. It is the biggest single year-over-year increase in the history of the league. 13.6%. The cap is now $255.4 million. The Commanders have more cap space than anyone else. That is still true, but now other teams obviously have different levels of cap space than maybe they thought because of that monumental and historic increase. How does this affect the Commanders, the fact that this increase was so large in a year where they hold the most space?
Yeah, my initial gut was negatively, right? More people have space, more people have room to spend, contracts go up. When the NBA did this and made the big one-year leap, it led to arguably some of the worst contracts in American sports over the past couple decades. I don't think that's going to happen here, but it is very clear the cost of doing business here in this year's free agency is going up. You've got teams who, when given any amount of cap space, are going to use it and use it right now to make their team better. There is no next year. My thought on reflecting on that is maybe good in the sense that I don't think these guys are playing for next year's Super Bowl. I don't think these guys are playing to load up their team for next year. It's possible Adam Peters wants to sit on the sideline for another year and let that cap space roll over, which he's allowed to do. Things stabilize next year. Teams have spent themselves into a hole. I don't know that, it necessarily means you'll be better off next year, but, I don't know that it was ever a given that they were going to spend their whole $85 million or whatever it was in this year's cycle. I think it's always been a possibility. These guys are working off of a 2 or a 3 year time period to spend that money.
So let's play that game for a second. Let's say Peters is like, let's pocket this. They do have to hit the salary floor, so they have to spend some of this, in fact, a lot of it. But, like, what does that look like compared to an aggressive free agency spring and offseason for the Commanders?
Yeah, right. You've got to shore up both in-house and out-of-house. So you probably circle Cam Curl as maybe being your top in-house priority, depending on, I guess, with the Rays, you could maybe open up the discussion of whether or not, the tag is worthwhile for him or a potential road to go down. I don't think they're going to do it, but it's a possibility for sure in a world where everybody's going to make more money than you thought they were. Let's just go crank the dial all the way up, like Chris Jones. You could be the Chris Jones winner. You've got enough money to do that. I think you've got a compelling enough case to make. He could be a star here. It's a defense on the rise under Dan Quinn. I think there's a compelling case to be made that if you wanted him, you could get him, right, going after a player like that. The problem for me is if I'm spending free agent money, I'd really like to spend it on an offensive lineman. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't know that there's, a sure thing can't miss guy out there who you'd want to spend that money on. So you talk about taking care of your Kendall Fullers and taking care of your in-house guys, your Cam Curls, your Kendall Fullers, and kind of hitting the floor, kicking that can down the road a little bit would be my instinct. But that comes from a guy who says, hey, what do you need on offense? You need an offensive line and a tight end. And I just don't know that this is the market to go find those things in.
Yeah, no, there is a bit of a mismatch there. There are a couple guys that I think are interesting, but no surefire stars. I actually don't know how much the tackles on the market are an upgrade over Leno and Wiley, for instance. I do think there's a couple of guards. Upgrading at left guard is basically impossible not to do, considering the level of play there. All due respect. But it is the kind of thing where, could you go out and find a left guard? Sure. But I don't think you're breaking the bank. And so it becomes this weird year where you wonder, do they spend a lot of money on a piece that could make a rookie quarterback's life easier? I don't know, Michael, a star running back. Do you have any interest in Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, or Josh Jacobs?
If I've got interest in any of them, it is Derrick Henry for me. And I do think Saquon's a really good back, by the way. I'm not opposed to that, but I think Saquon's probably going to get silly money from somebody. And no matter how much money I have to spend, I'm not in the business of paying silly money for a running back long term. I think Henry's probably going to be the better of the two deals. And I love a guy who can get a tough yard. He's proven himself durable, proven himself in short yardage. I hate how bad this team was at 3rd and 2 at short yardage situations. He's a guy who can take you a long way towards immediately fixing that. I'm not going to close the door on it. I know a lot of people just close the door, period, on paying any running back ever. I keep the door cracked open. If I can get a deal I like, and certainly a shorter term deal that I like, 1 or 2 years, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. If you can get a stud, professional running back and you're not paying a quarterback, and your goal is to make that guy's life easier, and you have to spend some money, I think there are worse ways to do it. Understanding that you're not doing it because it's a luxury and you're trying to win the Super Bowl, you're trying to develop a young quarterback, and that can make that guy's life easier. However, Michael Phillips, who is our guest, of course, host of MP on the Mic on 910 The Fan in Richmond. However, Michael Phillips, there is an alternate path at quarterback, and I'm not going to say keeping Sam Howell. I'm going to say spending money on a guy like Kirk Cousins. And I realize that is a loaded thing to say in this market because of the past there. But do you have any interest in going the veteran QB route, whether that is a short or long-term investment?
Yeah, here's why I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. Kirk isn't coming here. I just don't think that's something he would enter. I don't even think it has anything to do with how he was treated during his years here. I think he likes it living up near home. I think he likes the idea of winning a Super Bowl before he's done. I think he wants an immediate payoff, immediate gratification team, or a team that can win in the next few years. And this isn't that team, and this isn't that coaching staff. And I just don't think this is the place for him when it's all said and done. Sure, I love Jacoby Brissett this year. A guy like that. If you want to bring in a veteran like that to smooth the path for your rookie, if you go down that road. I am a big believer. This is a drum I've been beating for a while on my show. If you draft a quarterback in the first round, I don't want him starting week 1. Even if you go get Caleb Williams, I don't want him starting week 1. I just don't trust this offensive line for 17 games. I don't think it's good for him in a year where you're not going to be the Texans. You're not going to be C.J. Stroud and set the world on fire. It's far more likely you're going to be an incremental step forward. You're going to be a team that looks better but still not complete. I like the idea of limiting the amount of exposure my new guy gets to that. So in terms of signing a quarterback to play those first few weeks, or even entrusting Sam Howell to do it, I actually don't have a problem with that at all.
So I can hear the fans saying now, but Michael, the Texans were supposed to be terrible. How do you know? Why are you entering the spring with that as your mantra? I don't think it's unreasonable, but it is worth pointing out. Counterpoint, the Texans were supposed to suck, and they made the playoffs.
Yeah. And it gave the whole team a boost of life for sure. They had a coaching change that was, that provided energy to the organization. I don't know that this coaching change is necessarily let's put everything into hyperdrive right now. It feels much more of like, we're going to be competent adults in the room. We're going to grow this thing organically and well. That's obviously been Josh Harris and Adam Peters. They're very much on the same page. We'd love to do it as quickly as possible, but we want to do it in a long-term sustainable way. And none of that is to suggest the Texans aren't doing it in a long-term sustainable way. But looking at your opening day roster next year, I don't know that you can say this is a team that can contend right now. I think we're probably more likely going to say this is a team that can take a step forward, and they're still 1 year away. Probably.
And the way that they're going to jump that line, if you will, is if they accidentally draft C.J. Stroud. Stroud had the best rookie year ever of any quarterback. He was a legitimate MVP candidate. So if they go out and draft Jaden or Drake or Caleb and those dudes wind up being that dude, then so be it. All right, NFL Combine Week, Michael. Is there anybody in particular, any buddies, any position group, anything that you are particularly looking forward to, whether it's in formation or workouts coming out of Indianapolis?
Yeah, this is kind of the time when I start diving into the trenches, right? I'm a casual college football fan, probably same as a lot of people, and certainly versed enough to have an opinion on the quarterbacks, have an opinion on Marvin Harrison Jr., all the things you need to do, to be a knowledgeable fan. This is the week where I start really looking at the trenches, and I think it's a huge dilemma of who you go with that second pick you've got kind of started day two. Do you take an offensive lineman, a guy who, the best ones are going to be gone by then, but a guy who can develop into a long-term starter? Or do you go with an edge rusher? Because, with respect to KJ Henry, there's not a lot there. You got KJ Henry and some spare parts right now, and that's a really, really important thing for a football team to have in the year 2024, Craig Hoffman. To me, it's that great push and pull. Is there a guy I really like at either of those spots? Because that's absolutely the two places I'm looking once the quarterback debate gets settled here.
Right. No, I agree with you. And we did our first mock draft a couple weeks ago on Take Command. And, we had Logan is in love with Darius Robinson. He's like, that is the new Commanders football player, the edge from Missouri. So he could certainly be in play there. There's a ton of offensive linemen and I think the thing that's interesting about kind of those two picks at the top of the second round for Washington is there's going to be options for them. And we're going to learn a lot about how this team thinks about personnel and kind of who they want to be, I think, based off of that, because there's going to be a lot of players that are at the positions they need and are kind of equal evaluations but different flavors. And depending on which flavors they pick, I think will tell us a lot more about both these offensive and defensive schemes that right now, Michael, feel very mysterious. It does not feel like they have a plan.
Yeah, to kind of riff off of that, Kurt Warner had his tweets this weekend where he said, look, it's really hard for me to evaluate these quarterbacks because they're not asked to do NFL things. They're not asked to run NFL routes and concepts and make NFL throws. We'll save that for another day. But, boy, multiply that by 5 on the offensive line. The offensive lines in college just don't resemble NFL offensive lines at all anymore. It's really jarring. And that's why I think a week like this can be so valuable to see them in NFL-style drills, in NFL-style measurements, because for all the advancement in the world of scouting and the world of, tape and breaking down guys and PFF and all that, at the end of the day, you're probably taking somebody who hasn't done a lot of things you're going to ask him to do on the football field.
Which, by the way, makes J.J. McCarthy fascinating because there's not a lot of throws for that guy on film, but there's a lot of NFL throws for that guy on film. and he does pretty well with them. So I don't know. Like, he, to me, is the most interesting guy of the whole week. Like, Bo Nix had a chance, I think, at the Senior Bowl to solidify himself as QB4. If he went out and he just tore up the Senior Bowl and proved, like, yo, this Penix guy's all right, but, like, I'm on a totally different level. My interviews went great. And he didn't. He had a slow start to the week. He played all right by the end of it, but he just didn't rip apart the week in the way that I think a lot of people thought he was capable of. And now that's left the door open because Penix didn't have that great of a week either. For McCarthy to go in the combine, measure in 10 pounds heavier than he played at Michigan to alleviate some of the size concerns, run a 4.5, and just rip footballs all over the field in the throwing drills, and all of a sudden that dude's going to be QB4 by the time, if we talk a Monday from now. I think he's going to be QB4 on most people's list.
Yeah, and that's a great point for the trade down crowd. Everybody, trade down and get your guy. There's never a guarantee when you trade down that you're going to get your guy. All it takes is one team to fall in love with him up there and do something unexpected. There's always something unexpected on draft night, right? But the guy you want is off the board all of a sudden, and you make a panic pick and you pick Josh Doxson. Sorry, wait, I was having a flashback.
Oh, why did you do that to us? That was rude. Rude.
But, how far down can you go and still be assured of getting McCarthy? I think the answer is going to be a lot crazier of a number than you think it is.
I will, at this point, if you gave me over under 3.5 quarterbacks in the top 10, I would tell you over. I think that McCarthy winds up in the top 10.
As a lover of storylines and underutilized Michigan quarterbacks finally getting his due in the NFL, somebody will find a way to work with that.
Yeah, probably. All right, last thing for Michael Phillips, former newspaper writer, current radio host, 910 The Fan in Richmond. Michael, in your long and illustrious radio career, have you ever had a player call in to discuss his contract status like A.J. Brown called into WIP in Philadelphia?
WIP gets all the best calls. Remember earlier this year they had the police officer who called in to give an Eagles take while pulling somebody over. What
if that person was listening, by the way? What if that person is like, oh, son of a, that guy's coming to get me?
There's Richmond's a great market, DC's a great market, but there is something completely unreplicatable about that Philly market. That's for sure.
Who of the players that we have covered together, so I'm going to go since 2015, is the most likely Commander/Washington football player of the past to have done what A.J. Brown did? I think there is a correct answer.
Is it DJ Swearinger?
Oh, that's a great call. I was thinking it was J-No.
Yeah, well, we're in the same ballpark. We're certainly we're definitely cutting from the same cloth there for sure. Yeah, that's that absolutely.
Yeah, okay. All right, glad we're on the same page. All right, that's Michael Phillips, everybody. We're also on the same radio app. You can listen to his show anytime, anywhere on the free Odyssey app on demand. Also, of course, search for his podcast in your podcast feed, the podcast of his radio show, which is, again, MP on the Mic, every single day on 910 The Fan in Richmond. Miguel, muchas gracias, and we'll see how much news happens over this week in Indy, and if we talk again next Monday, or if we give it a couple of weeks and let some news build up in the backlog.
I'll be up in D.C. in a couple of weeks. We're doing our show live from the ACC basketball tournament.
Oh, nice.
That's a big deal for us down here. So
yeah.
If nothing else, hope to see you in person soon.
Yeah, no, we'll coordinate. We'll have your people call my people, aka we'll text. All right, thanks, Michael.
Take care.
That is Michael Phillips with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, let's circle back to the kind of the middle part of that discussion, and let's do it with you on the phones at 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. If you can kind of go off the board with some of this Commanders cap space, and you could spend it on a running back, you could spend it on a quarterback, would you consider that? And which of the players, the Kirk Cousins, the other veteran quarterbacks that are available, or the big three running backs that are all now going to free agency, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry, do you want Washington to pursue any of them? Take your calls on that next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Halfway through the show on a Monday, let's reset this. We are coming at you live from our DC studios today, but headed to Indianapolis for Radio Row tomorrow and Wednesday. Doc is in, short show. Lady Terps start at 5:45 on Thursday, and then back in the saddle on Friday with a bunch of stuff that we'll tape on Thursday before we head out from Indianapolis, including Nate Tice, Tom Pelissero on the Friday show, Mike Tannenbaum also on Friday, former NFL executive. Wednesday, amazing show, Ian Rappaport, Charles Davis, Lance Zierlein, J.I. Halsell, all live on set in Indianapolis. And then tomorrow, we got all kinds of great guests as well. And this time slot, sitting across from me, which this is so weird when you travel, Vic. When you go and all of a sudden you're sitting here at 5:30 on a Monday in your usual office chair in Washington, D.C., and you go, tomorrow I will be sitting at a table in Indianapolis on Radio Row surrounded by a bunch of other football nerds, and I will be talking to ESPN's Matt Miller. That's when you're reminded that air travel is very cool. So tomorrow, this time, 24 hours from now, Matt Miller from ESPN, his draft colleague, Jordan Reed, will also join us at a different point in the show. A couple of other great guests lined up as well. So make sure you're locked in for as much as you can tomorrow, Wednesday. And if you miss any part of it, that is why the podcast is so valuable. So make sure you check that out wherever you get your pods. Right now, though, taking some calls and dishing some opinions on the Commanders and the free agent market, which is now, according to multiple reports, going to be pretty running back heavy. We saw T. Higgins get the tag in Cincinnati on the wide receiver side of it, but for running backs, no tag for Saquon Barkley, no tag for Josh Jacobs, no tag for Derrick Henry. All three of those premier running backs will become free agents. And my initial thought is, no way would I go and spend any kind of significant money on any of those three players. And then I thought about it a little bit more. And this is where I would like to, throw out what I'm thinking and then get your feedback on it at 301-230-0980. That's how this whole radio shenanigans works. Washington is going to likely draft a quarterback at number 2 overall. Their roster has significant holes in it. There are some positions where I think those holes can be filled very well in free agency. There are a couple of tackles and guards that I'm interested in. There are a couple of safeties that I'm interested in, one of whom is Cam Curl, but there's other guys that I think I like better and would prefer to just spend a little bit of extra money on someone else that are long-term building blocks. This guy's going to be here when this team is competing, hopefully 3 years from now, for a championship. That is the goal, right? You nail this quarterback pick. By year 3, he's like ready to rumble. You got dudes all over the field. Quan is developed. Forbes is developed. You've drafted a couple of other classes worth of guys. Like, all this stuff comes together and boom, you hit the ground running. But I think in the meantime, you want to make sure that you build an environment that incubates that quarterback, where they know that they've got something they can rely on. And if I am a young quarterback and 20 times a game, I can turn around and I can go, Derrick Henry, here's the football. That makes me feel good inside. And that is going to make my job easier. We're going to be on schedule more. It's also going to make my line better. It's probably going to entice my play caller and Cliff Kingsbury to run the ball a little bit more than he otherwise might and protect me. And look, I like Brian Robinson a lot, but it's running back in the NFL. And if you can get more, that's great. Let's get more. Chris Rodriguez, I like a lot as well. There's definitely things to like, and I think if I was trying to build like a well-rounded team, a scat back third down type is probably the better fit. Ironically, Antonio Gibson's probably on his way out the door and could in some ways fill that as a former college receiver, as you all know. But would Derrick Henry be appealing? Sure. Would, as a downhill runner in kind of a gap scheme system that Cliff used to run in Arizona, like James Conner style? Yeah, that Derrick Henry's appealing. Is Josh Jacobs appealing in that same system? Yeah. Is Saquon appealing because Saquon's one of the freakiest football players, like best just overall? What's your position? Football player, sir. Guys that you could have in the league as an outlet out of the backfield, as a guy who can hit you home runs from anywhere. Yeah, like I'm interested. I think I agree with Phillips. He made a good point when he was just on with us that Saquon, because of his age and because of his style, probably requires a little bit more of a long-term commitment. But if you can pay a lot of money for 1 or maybe even 2 years worth of any of these guys, and you can get away with that contract, the shorter, fatter contract that doesn't tie you up long-term, I can't say I'm not interested in the name of giving the quarterback a binky, a blanky, a big, giant 220-pound NFL running back that can smash people's faces and make his job easier. What say you? 301-230-0980. And, of course, if you want to have any other position that you think is worth spending money on, by all means, hit us. Let's start out with the JYD, Junkyard Dog, with us here on the Hoffman Show. JYD, what up, man?
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Appreciate your call. What you got on this free agency situation for us?
Well, free agency, I wouldn't spend any money on Derrick Henry. I just don't like 30-year-old quarterbacks who are soon to be 31. And so the only running back that I would be interested in would be Jacobs.
Yeah, I think he's actually, in some ways, the most interesting of the bunch. Saquon's had all these injury issues. Jacobs gives you the downhill banger that Henry is, but in a much younger body. And a guy who's kind of, I think, been underutilized. I mean, he had one big, heavy carry season, but last year I don't even think he accumulated that many carries.
I mean, if I had to do that, I would go after Jacobs. But if I'm in hierarchy of a team, I would be saying to myself, if I actually need a running back, why not get one from the draft?
Well, of course that's an option, right? And this is kind of, this draft class, and JYD, appreciate your call as always. Like, this draft class is kind of a weird one at running back. I'd say a lot of folks nationally are down on it. Logan and I actually spent a little time on this on Take Command that we recorded today. It'll be out first thing tomorrow in your podcast feeds. But, like, this is a draft that doesn't have the Bijan. It doesn't have the Saquon. It doesn't have a top stud running back. But it's got a kind of a running back third round range, any kind that you like. It's got the bruisers. It's got the whatever. But, like, if you're, or the scat backs, the third down guys, but if you are trying to incubate a young quarterback, what is going to give that quarterback more confidence? A fellow rookie or a dude who's had 2,000-yard seasons in the league? And that's, I think, the appeal of potentially spending some money, because at the end of the day, like, this free agent class, especially if Brian Burns gets tagged, there's just not a lot. Like, of course you can spend money. You can bring back Cam Curl, and I would almost do it on the tag. Like, I don't know that I want to commit to him long term until I see him in this defense. Now, does it raise the price for him next year? Potentially, but it doesn't commit you long term. We talk about bringing Kendall Fuller back. Like, what does that mean? Back to, is there some benefits of incumbency in terms of they've played together before and there's communication that has happened, and he's a good vet who knows some of these guys? Sure, but it's a new system. So, like, I would score more points for an incumbency if there's somebody like Stephon Gilmore coming out of Dallas who played for Quinn and Witt last year. He's almost more valuable to me than Kendall Fuller in terms of incumbency, in terms of continuity, because the continuity of players playing together who have played together before, if they're in a completely new system and environment, is kind of wiped away. And so what are we actually talking about when they have a league-leading amount of cap space? What are they actually going to spend it on? And that to me is where this gets super interesting. Like, what exactly do you want the Commanders to spend on? And I think that there is something to the logic of nothing that's a long-term commitment. And at that point, you can afford some luxuries like a veteran running back if they're willing to take your money for a year and know that they're probably going to be a part of a not as good team. As opposed to a guy, if Derrick Henry's like, you know what? I could get $18 million in Washington on a 1-year deal and eat up a bunch of their cap space, which is actually helps them reach the salary floor, and know I'm a part of a rebuilding project and see where we stand in a year. Or I can take $3 million and go to Kansas City and know I'm going to compete for a Super Bowl. What's it worth to you? And I think that's the question that some of these running backs might have to ask. Let's go to JT in D.C. JT, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Doing well. What you got for us on free agency?
Free agency, just like the previous caller, I would not. I mean, I like everything that you're saying. It sounds good, but I would not touch any of those running backs. But I will go after Patrick Queen hard at the LB position from Baltimore.
Sure.
I think they'll end up franchising Matabuke. So I think he should be fair game. I also will go after Bryce Huff from the Jets. And the last guy just, man, dropped off the tip of my tongue. Damn.
Happens to the best of us.
Oh, Jalen Johnson from the corner from Chicago.
Yeah. No, the DB there. Yeah, no, he's a good player. Appreciate the call, man. That's a good list. And here's what I would say to JT and to anybody else who's got a list like that. If you hit those are guys that are long-term investments. Those are guys that you're spending money on because you're going in 3 years when we want to compete for a championship. They're going to be integral parts. And a guy like Queen is a culture setter. I don't dislike that. I do wonder, is he a signal caller type? I feel like Roquan was I got to check. I don't want to speak out of turn. But, like, is he a green dot guy? Because you've got Jamin Davis, at least for this year. Not that should necessarily stop you unless you think Jamin's a huge part of your future. But Queen's a culture setter, changes your defense instantly. He also has played in a 3-4. So what is he as a 4-3 Mike linebacker? Like, that is a different position, different ask, different needs. But I don't hate that idea. Jalen Johnson, like, does he fit your scheme? Does he fit what you want to do? Like, these are the questions that they've got to answer. But there are good players available, I guess is ultimately, like, the point here. There are good players available. The question is, how do they fit in what Washington wants to do? And knowing that what Washington wants to do is, of course, win football games, but is also establish a culture and establish a way of playing and establish an environment that can breed young players into the best that they can be in the long term. We'll talk more about some of those young players, by the way, coming up in the 6 o'clock hour with Eric Edholm from NFL Media. Their draft analyst, longtime Yahoo sports writers, made the flip a couple years ago to NFL.com. Also, you'll hear some of Logan and I's takes on whether or not the combine is kind of losing its luster. And what that means is some of the top guys have started to announce that they are not participating. So, little take command preview for you coming up in the 6 o'clock hour as well. More of your calls next, though, 301-230-0980 on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You missed any part of the show, you can always check the podcast. Just search the Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app, which, of course, is the free Odyssey app. But just in case you use a different one, we are there, too. Oh, there it is, Vic. There it is. The beeping.
I can hear it.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do about it.
Where's that even coming from?
There's a computer down here, and I don't know what it is. And we've asked to get it, but because it happens so sporadically, like they don't really know what it is.
Wow. Hopefully no one can hear it on the radio.
Oh, no, they can definitely hear it.
Okay.
There's not intermittent cussing happening in the background. It's just sometimes there's beeping that happens. And it'll go away in, like, at this point, probably about 7-8 seconds, I'm guessing.
I hope so.
Yeah. But I'm at this point, I was talking, it's like if you have a lot of kids and one of them is screaming. I was talking to my buddy Chris this is like a year ago, and he's got 4 kids. And Chris was telling me about fatherhood, and he's just like, look, when you have your first kid, anytime they move, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The second one, like, you know what to expect more so. Oh, see, there goes the beeping.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, we're done. So the second kid, it's like, oh, gotta watch it. Okay, we're good. The third kid, you're like, you're fine. And the fourth kid, you're like, someone's screaming. And I'm now at 4th kid status with this beeping.
Is it random times, or is it always at a set time?
No, that's the funny bit. For a while, it was like the first, like we'd get on the air and it would start. And I'd be like, really, at 4:02? But it's moved around a little bit.
Maybe the rooster might have planted a device in there we don't know about. He might be trying to sabotage.
Is the rooster up to no good?
Yeah, we have to do some investigation on that.
Again, I just would like engineering to be like, I know what that beeping is, and then fix it. But we can't seem to figure it out.
There's an engineer right there across the hall. I see him.
Yeah, we should. And in the break, can we? Because sometimes I forget to tell them things. So I say that I've told them. I definitely have told them at some point, but probably not recently. So let's Vic, between the two of us, remember in the commercial break to
I'm
pop
trying
on
to
over.
Air traffic control him over.
Well, see,
to the
but
studio.
I need you for the rest of the segment. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, because you had some. I was talking to you in the break, and you had some good thoughts on how Washington could potentially handle this whole "we got a lot of money" situation.
Yeah,
I actually liked your running back thought.
I was initially thinking about Saquon Barkley, but then as I'm going through all the free agent lists, how about a good cheaper option, and it's staying in the NFC East, in Tony Pollard?
I don't hate it.
I mean, that guy, I think that guy is very underrated in terms of being a running back, and he's a great pass-catching running back too.
I think the idea of putting Pollard back where he was when he was with Zeke, like prime Zeke and young Tony Pollard, like, yes, Tony Pollard proved last year I just think he proved he was a number 1 back. I don't think he's a premier number 1 back. You put him in a rotation with Brian Robinson, now we're cooking.
I think he would be better than Antonio Gibson.
I agree. Yeah, no, I would say that he is a better speed, like out of the backfield back than AG. And I like AG, but I think if he's your third down, and he's more than a third down back, right? Like you can play him on first and second down, but like in that role of your pass catcher, your JD McKissick plus, your Antonio Gibson plus, your Chris Thompson back in the day plus, you're a better version of all those guys. Who, by the way, if you need to start, like you're not in a bad situation, but you can split carries with Chris Rodriguez. Like, I think that's a great pickup for much less money. But I do think like the idea of spending on a running back, and like in a way you're zigging when everyone else zags. You can take advantage of a bit of a market inefficiency. And I would say also, Vic, did you see Pollard on McAfee's show at the Super Bowl?
No, and I watched a lot of his shows, but I did not see that.
So Pollard, it had been at that point, like a week since Quinn got hired.
Uh-huh.
Pollard didn't know.
Really?
He I don't know whether he was on vacation, but he doesn't have social media. So it would be hilarious if Tony Pollard wound up playing for Dan Quinn in Washington after not knowing he had the job and was leaving Dallas for a week after Dan Quinn had left Dallas.
Well, if he ever joins the Commanders, hopefully he'll know.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, did you know that that Dan Quinn's the head coach here? He was the guy that coached defense in the last place you were.
Yeah.
And so that guy, it's Joe Witt. He was also there in Dallas with you, and now he's here. That'd be a funny bit.
Yeah.
That would be good. All right. I like that idea. I like that more than any of the veteran. Like, I think they should sign, whether it's, I don't think Jacoby's going to want to come back. Like, I think Brissett's going to want to go somewhere that he feels like he can start. And maybe, Cliff and them are like, look, we're going to draft a kid. This kid's going to replace you eventually. But unlike last year when you were told you're going to have a chance to win the job and didn't, like, unless this kid comes into camp and is amazing, you're starting for us. And if you win football games, you're going to stay the starter for us. So you want that? Okay, cool. Here's another $10 million of Josh Harris's money. If that's the case, I think Jacoby might be interested. But I am definitely curious because he does know like Terry and Jahan and throws those guys well. So like there's some power and continuity there. But I do think they need to sign a vet to be in the room. We'll see who that guy is. But I like that more than, going the Cousins path or whatever. And I do, I think Cousins would be open to coming to Washington because it's a completely new regime and like any of the baggage is gone. I do tend to agree with Michael Phillips and what he said at the top of the hour, which is that situationally, this doesn't feel like the right place for Cousins unless they can make massive investments in the draft and in free agency and other places to prove that they're ready to win next year. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we will talk NFL Combine, get a full preview from our guy, Eric Edholm. show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And tomorrow we'll be doing all of that from the NFL Combine. We're on Radio Row in Indianapolis. And to get us ready, one of my favorite people to see out in Indy. Can't wait to see him in person. Hopefully tomorrow. We typically run into each other very early in the day. It is Eric Edholm from NFL.com and NFL Media. Double E, how we doing, man? It's your week. It's Combine week.
It is. It's a big week. Yeah, I mean, not just for draft stuff. Obviously, a lot of meeting of the minds in the Indy after hours, early mornings, what have you. Free agents looming. Certainly with the agents all in town. It's a big week. So, yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's a great week. Always something to look forward to every year. There's a reason why all of us keep going. So let's get into what this week is, though, because I think there's kind of obviously the glorification by the league of the workouts. They've now put it in prime time. You know, it's the underwear Olympics. Everyone's heard all those lines before. But as you actually prepare for this week, what are some of the things that you are looking for, especially some of these top names, whether it's the top quarterbacks or a guy like Marvin Harrison, aren't going to do much, if anything, this week?
Yeah, it sounds like a few of the quarterbacks won't be throwing. I mean, again, not a shocker. We see this every year, and I always joke to people, I'm like, can you even remember who threw at the Combine? I mean, obviously those of us who go and watch it on TV pretty closely do, but I think the point being, right, just because somebody doesn't throw or work out at the Combine doesn't mean they're NFL prospects. They're doomed, of course, but I mean, it often provides a showcase. I mean, DJ Turner running a 4.29, I think, helped his cause as an undersized corner last year, and other players that outperform their expectations athletically is certainly something that can move the needle a little bit. There's obviously a quotient that we don't always get the full info on, which is the interview process. Certainly part of the full picture you're trying to build on a draft class and a prospect individually, but also the medical stuff. And, that gets leaked out over time usually, or we'll find out some information while we're in Indy occasionally. But, when you boil it down, I think really the interview and injury information end up outweighing any athletic testing stuff. And, it's really great to see the guys throw in person. I thought Mobile was very valuable in terms of balancing and weighing the arm talent of the different quarterbacks there, and you can get something out of this process as well from that perspective.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I will say, I've only gotten the chance to watch the guys throw once. It was like the first year they let a select group of media in. Now, of course, media can go watch the workouts. And the most impressive thrower I saw was Dwayne Haskins, who wound up in Washington. And obviously, that story took a sad and tragic turn at the very end in terms of his life. But as a quarterback, it didn't work in the league. So you can only get so much from that anyway. In terms of guys that are going to work out that we know this week is really important to them. And it could be some first rounders, could be some guys that you think, they have a good week and right now they're later in the draft, they bump up and they could be really good NFL players. Like, this is what you do. You're the draft guy when it comes to NFL.com. So who are some of the guys that you have your eyes on going into this week?
Yeah, I think if you start at quarterback, there's probably two really interesting stories that could come out of this week, and one would be Drake May. I mean, with Caleb Williams not expected to throw or work out, I'm sure he'll interview and do stuff behind the scenes, but possible number one overall pick. We don't know what's going on in Chicago. We don't know what's happening elsewhere, but pretty good bet he's either going first or second. But May is somebody who is expected to work out. We haven't heard definitively yet, but it sounds like he'll give it a go. And, there's some impressive stuff on this kid. I mean, some people saying he's got some Justin Herbert to him, some Joe Burrow, really athletic and talented guy. He's got great bloodlines, and how he throws can maybe change the conversation a little bit. I don't think it's a consensus that Caleb Williams is unquestionably the top quarterback on every team's draft board. Now, whether that impacts the top spot or not, I don't know. But, the difference between 1 and 2 is big. I mean, I know it sounds like one spot, but, financially speaking, and then also, football-wise and how it all works out, it can have a huge impact. We saw Travon Walker surpass Aiden Hutchinson a few years back, and we're still talking about and debating that one to this day. So, how May performs is going to be fascinating. Michael Penix, I think, is a big one. I mentioned the behind-the-scenes stuff, the injury stuff. He has a litany of injuries. 4 season-ending injuries in his career, 2 shoulders, 2 ACLs. Had the ankle that he banged up in the national title game. Had a few other little nicks and bruises along the way. So, there's going to be a more scrutinized player in Indy. I don't know of one. I mean, I think he's going to be one of the big potential gainers or losers based on what comes out of his evaluation. We know he can throw it. I mean, obviously he's got a golden arm, but the medical testing for me is going to end up deciding not only his ceiling, but also his floor as a prospect. So that's a big one right there. I think some players like Ladd McConkey and Roman Wilson, who are productive college receivers, but come with maybe, I don't want to say suspicion, but can they be true number ones, or can they be, lead receivers for good football teams, and how well they test for, not say smaller guys, but not bigger receivers, right? Especially in this class where there's a lot of length, there's a lot of athleticism, bigger framed receivers than those 2 guys. But both went down to Mobile, performed well. Wilson's expected to run well. I bet McConkey runs better than people think he will. And by also running, I mean, some of the agility drills as well, 3-cone and all that stuff, 20-yard shuttle. I mean, those matter for receivers who are shiftier, change of direction guys. So I think those are 2 big ones. And then I guess, if we're sticking with like the fantasy football kind of angle here,
right,
the running back position is really interesting to me in that we don't have a clear-cut number 1 right now. I'll be curious to see if 1 or 2, emerge out of the group right now. And there are, plenty of guys like Jonathan Brooks from Texas who have, injury questions as well. And yeah, I would just say that for as strong an offensive draft as this is, the running back in position is probably the most unsettled at the top as far as, who might be the first 2 or 3 backs off the board.
That's super interesting, especially considering how diluted the position has become, generally speaking. Eric Edholm, lead draft writer, NFL.com, is with us here on the Hoffman Show, getting us ready for the NFL Combine this week in Indianapolis. So if we talk about the quarterbacks and who Washington is circling at number 2, obviously, if Williams drops, he's in the mix. May, Jaden Daniels. And then, I guess one of the questions I would have, Eric, is, like, part 1 of the question is, which one of those top 3 guys do you think fits best with Washington, with what Cliff wants to build, which still seems pretty undefined, that he's flexible in what he wants to build, but knowing what we know about Cliff, like which of those guys would you be targeting if you were him? And then I guess the second thing I would love to get your perspective on is how big is the gap to the next 3 guys if all of a sudden an Atlanta, for instance, at 8 gives you a massive offer to trade down, and you still want to take quarterback, but like how big is the drop to Penix, McCarthy, and Nix, assuming those are your next 3?
Yeah, right. In whatever order, too. I mean, that's the interesting part. I mean, J.J. McCarthy probably helped himself by, not going to the Senior Bowl. I mean, he could have, I guess, but, it was one of those things where sometimes a player not being an event where Nick started slowly and, got better as the week went on, and Penix started out pretty well and then kind of leveled off and didn't play in the game. McCarthy all of a sudden is a fascinating guy, and how high he goes will be a big story this week too. So that folds into what Washington's trying to do is figure out, hey, if if we don't get Caleb, and obviously the ties there, would not talent, and there's obviously Caleb similar, but for sure, and the talent is what you're really most curious about. I mean, look, there was an interesting debate last year with Stroud and Bryce Young, and how that whole class shook out and who was the real star of the group. Was there a star in the group? Well, we got kind of a fascinating answer last year. I mean, I don't know that anyone expected the gap to be as big as it showed after one season, situations be damned and all that. So I don't know. I don't know that there's a massive difference. If you had a fully healthy Michael Penix, like no injury questions, first of all, he probably would have come out before this, but still,
sure.
How good is he? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Maybe there isn't a massive gap between the top three and the next three, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the other interesting factor that I have real trouble squaring is the age part of it. And Daniels and Penix and Nix are all older guys. The other three are all younger. And McCarthy's like really young. May's actually pretty young. They're actually pretty close to the same age. Like, how does that 2-year gap both affect the evaluation of like, okay, well, yeah, he was awesome as a senior, but he was a 23-year-old going up against 19-year-olds, and also how NFL teams factor that into what they'll ultimately get out of the player?
Yeah, I mean, what it might tell you for an older prospect is that, what you've seen so far is probably going to be closer to their ceiling, right? That's probably, again, difference between college and NFL has to be weighed and factored in and all that, but the idea being that a lot of NFL teams feel like most athletes sort of hit their peak, maybe not mentally speaking, but physically somewhere in that, 22 to 23 range. So, is Jaden Daniels going to be better than he was last year? Can he make strides as a passer? He's got a talented arm. He can obviously throw on the move. His running ability is unquestioned, I think, at this point, but is there upward mobility for him to develop as a passer? The obvious answer is yes, but how much? And, I look at Burrow as a good example. I mean, he was older than what Penix will be coming into this class, relatively speaking, 24 after the draft. I think he turns May or something like that. He turns 24. So, is that ancient? No. 25 and above, you're starting to really kind of push it a little bit, but I feel like 24 still kind of gives you a little bit of leeway based on the success of some other rookie quarterbacks who've entered the league at that age. But there are some highly analytic-driven front offices that just don't see the value in taking that player at that point. Obviously at a certain point in the draft they would, but based on where they're likely to go, probably wouldn't be their first choice. And it's an interesting approach. I mean, everyone's got a kind of a different view on that.
Yeah, definitely. Remember when Brandon Weeden was a first-round pick at 28?
Oh, yeah.
Why did
29 years old, whatever he was, the rookie, yeah.
Yeah, 28, first-round, oldest first-round selection ever, 22nd overall by the Cleveland Browns. That was a different era of Cleveland Browns football. Thankfully for Cleveland
yeah, they won't
fans.
touch anybody over 22 now. It seems it's unbelievable, right?
Maybe they learned their lesson with specifically Brandon Weeden. Eric Edholm, always welcome here on the Hoffman Show, but especially you will always hear him this time of year around the draft. Eric, safe travels to Indy. I will see you there, my friend, and thanks as always for your time.
Looking forward to it, buddy. See you there.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. After dark here. We've shifted again. I feel like we had gotten past this. That or Vic, I might have been out so long I don't remember anything. But I know that daylight savings time is coming soon. Is that this weekend?
It might be next week. I have it on my calendar.
I do too.
But we spring forward 1 hour.
Right, and that makes it less.
So at 2 a.m. it would actually be 3 a.m.
Right, which you lose an hour, but it we'd be done by now. Right?
Yeah, that's
because it's 7:20. The 10th is when that happens.
Yep, Sunday, March 10th.
Sunday, March 10th. No, this weekend we get something totally different. We get Formula One back this weekend, which I'm excited about.
You're a Formula One guy?
Me and millions of other Americans who watched Drive to Survive and got hooked.
Wow.
Are you?
No.
You watch Drive to Survive?
Never even heard of it.
You have Netflix?
I do have Netflix, yes.
You should watch Drive to Survive.
Just racing's not my thing.
It wasn't mine either.
You were not a racing guy.
No.
You watched this, and now you're hooked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At the very least, I'm not saying you'll get hooked on, like, you'll actually watch the races, but the show, it's 10 episodes. There's now I think this is season 6 that's out now. That just came out on Friday. Happy birthday to me. I think you'll like the show. It's the drama of sports.
How long is the episodes? Is it 30?
They're 40-ish.
40-ish minutes. I just don't know if I have the time for it.
Oh, you're a very busy man.
Yeah, very busy.
What do you do during the day, Vic?
Play Madden. I got Super Bowls to win.
You do? With Sam Howell?
Yes.
With Sam Howell?
Yeah.
Funny about it. I am curious. So apparently Ralph Vacciano from Fox Sports actually did some of the reporting that allegedly there are teams that are interested in like a 3rd round pick for Sam. Or someone posited to him, not that teams are interested, not that he was like, I have a team that is interested in a 3rd round pick. Or giving a 3rd round pick for Sam Howell. But he's like, well, if Trey Lance got a 4th, why couldn't Sam Howell get a 3rd? And it's like, and then that turned into a whole news cycle. Mm-hmm. I'm very curious to see if there is vast Sam Howell discussion in Indianapolis. Because I don't think he'll be a topic. I just don't.
I'd rather have him as a backup or even a starter, and then whoever we draft sit on the sidelines for a few games.
Well, I mean, the thing is with Howell, like, I don't know how well he knows this offense. Like, if it's a similar air raid system to what he ran at North Carolina, potentially, then maybe he's helpful. But, like, what does he offer? I like Sam, and I was midway through the season, like, I think this dude's a future starting quarterback. Like, I would be there. And then I saw the rest of the season. But, like, he doesn't have a vast amount of experience. So, like, I would say this. Like, if you can get a 3rd rounder, you should do that today.
Oh, hands down, yeah.
You drafted him as a 5th rounder. 2 years are gone off of his rookie contract, and you can get a 3rd rounder back? That's a return on investment, baby.
It is, but who would think about that? There's no chance that anyone would offer that.
That's what I don't understand. I truly don't understand it at all. Like, what team is offering that? Like, I understand conceptually, if Lance got a 4th, wouldn't you take a 3rd for Sam? Like, yeah. Because I think Sam's proven to be the better NFL quarterback. Trey Lance hasn't gotten to play a whole lot.
What teams would be in the market for, like, a Sam Howell?
Yeah, but I truly don't know. Like, I could see. All right, let me play this out. Let me try to do this in my head. Like, let's say Minnesota re-signs Kirk, but they're not confident he's going to start the season. Would you be willing to trade a 3rd to have Kirk Cousins insurance in the form of Sam Howell? I don't know about a 3rd, maybe a 4th or a 5th.
That's too expensive for a placeholder. Just too expensive for Minnesota.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. But, like, maybe that's the kind of team that does it?
I mean,
like, you kind of need, like, someone who you think might play, but
maybe
also
Denver, but I feel like maybe they would be in more like J.J. McCarthy.
Right, but, like, at that point, right. why not just draft the guy?
Right. Which is why no one will spend on a Sam Howell. Expensive.
Yeah. I don't I don't get it.
Seahawks? I mean, you like Geno Smith. You would take Geno Smith over Sam Howell?
Yeah, I don't even like Geno Smith.
Right.
I don't like Geno Smith. I do like Sam Howell. I'd rather have Geno start for me tomorrow.
Yeah. No one else in the NFC West.
And plus, they have Drew Lock as a backup. I think he's got one more year left, although he might be on the free agent market. It's like I don't even know what the profile. I mean, I get like if you're the Rams, right, and you've got Stafford who gets hurt every single year, and you need a guy who you think for 3 games can keep you afloat. Or again, if you're the Jets and if you're scared about Rodgers coming back, or you're Minnesota and you're scared about Kirk, I get it. That would be the kind of team, but I don't think those guys are giving up a third. And like you want someone who's got a little bit of experience. You don't want a young guy. You're ready to win now.
How about
and
the
you're hoping that
Steelers?
he keeps you afloat. I mean, I guess they got to figure out their starter. Is Pickett the guy?
I honestly might think Sam Howell's better than Kenny Pickett.
I would probably agree with that. I don't know Vic. Apparently, we can go play for Mike Tomlin. This is something I want to talk about tomorrow. Because we have one of the things we're doing tomorrow on the show from Indy is we're going to do. This is probably going to be my topic. Actually, we're doing an NFL roundtable, basically, and it's going to be me, Brooke Pryor, who covers the Steelers for ESPN, Ben Solak, who writes about all things football and is an X's and O's guru for The Ringer, and then we'll have one other person on the panel as well, TBD. I don't want to give a name until it's finalized. But I want to ask, with Brooke on the panel as someone who's covered Tomlin, Solak, who covers the league, and one of the people we're considering covers another very good team. Like, with Quinn coming here, what makes a great NFL head coach? And I really want to know Brooke's answer as someone who's covered Tomlin. And so I long wind up in shameless self-promotion of our radio show tomorrow to say, Vic, I do think the Steelers would still win 9 games if we played quarterback. He's never had a losing season, ever.
That's crazy.
Not one.
The fact that people were thinking that he was going to potentially be available as a head coach is asinine to think.
I never entertained it for a second.
Never did.
Not one.
No.
The Steelers don't fire coaches, and he's too good. If you're going to fire a guy and everyone else would fight over your guy, you shouldn't fire that guy.
Right.
That's kind of typically how that goes. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are live from Indianapolis starting tomorrow for a couple of days of shows from Radio Row at the NFL Combine. Incredible guest lists, all NFL insiders, draft nicks, like anybody who's anybody covering this thing. We got like 90% of those people on the show. And the other ones, my flight got in too late, which is a bummer. But excited to do that over the next couple of days. There's also a chance we have some Commanders folks on the show. Still working on through the details of that. So obviously if that comes through, we will promote the hell out of it. So you'll know. That's a service. That's not us shamelessly promoting. That's us doing a service to you so you know when to listen. And if you can't listen, we do another service. It's called a podcast. And you can get that anywhere you get your podcast just by searching for The Hoffman Show. When we get back, a clip of a different podcast. Still the same host, though. Take Command, Logan and I talked about the continuing trend of top players sitting out of the NFL Combine. Worth it or not? Mistake or not? Logan and I discuss next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Take Command Podcast, of course, me and Logan Paulson. You can catch it multiple times per week in your favorite podcast app. And we give you little snippets, little previews, some good discussion here on the show. And this latest clip that we're going to give you is actually for a podcast that's not out yet. You can catch it on YouTube tonight and in your podcast feed first thing tomorrow morning in full. But we started off the show talking about how top prospects like Marvin Harrison Jr. and some of the top quarterbacks are not working out. And what does that mean for the NFL and the NFL Combine before we head there ourselves starting tomorrow?
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command Podcast. What's up? What's happening? That is Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. We are sitting in our homes in the greater D.C. area, but Logan, it is Combine Week. We are headed to Indy soon.
Yeah, headed to Indy soon. Very exciting. Always, it's like the reunion for the NFL every time it's out there, and it's also fun to see all the young athletes come out and kind of do incredible stuff.
So it's a reunion that actually launches us perfectly. I don't think you did this on purpose, but you're just talented. You're just chef's kiss. So good at this. It kind of launches us into our first topic, which is the reunion is not as big as it used to be. Now have a lot of NFL coaches that are not going. Commanders, I heard Kyle say on his pod the other day that they're not sending any of their assistants out there. DQ is going for a very short time, in part just to do his media responsibilities, and then he's headed back because there's so much work. I know LaFleur and the Packers staff not going. Like, there's a lot. I don't think Sean and Kevin have gone for the past couple of years. Kevin was there last year for a short time, but like those guys get in and out pretty quick. Yeah. Some of them do the press conference. They're now skipping the press conference and saying, I don't even care about that. So but they're certainly not staying for the workout, and they're letting their scouts and the college operation do that. And then on the player side, you have top guys, I would say, doing even less than ever. We've always had top guys, top quarterbacks especially, not throw. Certain guys won't run certain drills. But you have a guy now like in Marvin Harrison, according to Albert Breer's reporting this morning, that he's not even training for any of this stuff. He's not even going to do a pro day. Like, he's training football next year. And I think there's a lot of offshoots about this. But as the NFL, as a league, is pumping the Combine up as this big entertainment event, what do we make about the fact that the people inside the league, players, coaches, prospects, and coaches, seem to be making less of it?
I don't know if they're making less of it. I think just times have changed. And what I mean by that is, I think, when you talk to guys from the Miami Dolphins or guys from San Francisco, Kyle doesn't send anybody out anymore. They record the whole event. And so I remember talking to a couple coaches from Miami last year, basically saying, like, I don't need to watch the on-field stuff anymore because I can watch it on tape. For to take and guys um, on tape where I get the opportunity to see them at the com. I think technology, because of just different stuff, how people are engaging, still extremely twisted. It's still a data point for all them, and if they're not at the com on their days. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's that the level guys are really doing stuff. I think it's smart. And Harrison Jr. can happen for you. Like, what are you going to go any higher? You're going to go where you're going to have this GPS data. Now, like when you talk to, like I know the LA Rams realize that they don't care. So they care more about. So his GPS, there's stuff that came out 23 months. So if I'm having that information, do whatever you want, because if I don't, then, and I think that's, as you examples like Dallas a couple of years ago, the interviews, press or something, but he didn't do ends. And I remember thinking, like, he looks home, but the one is to run really. If I don't have as the film, so I think that's something that people now are by their agents. Don't test that. Losing leverage in this.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, 4 touchdowns back to like what am 4.4 second thing. And so I think for guys, prove their worth. Comes a first rounder because 4-3 and that guy back it up at the pro. I think some of the come really rich, you can train for. McCarthy 215 instead of 2 does you a verse. I think this is your arm, what it is. There's no train. So there are a huge opportunity, that are at, and it's really a percentages, top 1-2% of guys that the top guys at each position, like quarterback, none of those guys shot those top 3. Anybody else have opportunity. So get it twisted. Everybody, like, no, if you're top 10 pick, fine. You're trying to get into that from, the way. That's worth it.
I think that's it's just important. Like it in certain cases, like I was talking before the senior opportunity, getting really good, like, because he's got top, I think so it means he's going to play. Injury, I don't want him to go to people to be. It's the same thing. Run fast, run at the combo. Don't imagination. You have all this self, and I know some stuff, which is a little bit that later. But the majority of people, I think a good example of this, like the Oregon Senior Bowl, you have to and so his arms are which are than you want. And after that, maybe he's more football player. Where like the general, are all still extreme as far as a team to kind of minimum threshold. What guys aren't doing incredibly, because it gives you kind of, you hear like talk about this all, like it's thing that separates. If Malik Neighbors a 4.2 and looks good, do you hold junior? Because I know in conversation Malik Neighbors and junior. And
today that teams, I'm trying to remember, but it might have been Breer. A lot of teams in the public real neighbor.
Yeah, and I think receiver position, bigger guy struggle at the end. You know what I mean in terms of creation, obviously, but I think he's much more of a better mold, and I think they're excited about him. Runs and caught the ball long, like going to be a stamps. And for me, I don't the player with Marvin Harrison for him evaluator, and at a different example, something. Are you slower? People think, and that's something is when you coach, there's a lot of scout. Like, why are you hiding from this measurement? Are you not as fast as people think you are? And when you watch the film, sometimes you're like, man, like how fast is he really? Like when he gets in space, he's not pulling away from people the way you think he should. Like that's not to say like I'm not criticizing Marvin Harrison Jr., but I do think it gives some people, some scouts, an opportunity to kind of say, to peck at this, what up to this point has been an immaculate evaluation process. He's the guy. He's one of the best receivers I've ever evaluated. But now you're going to say, oh, well, he's not running. Is he slower than we think? Let's compare him to Malik, who ran and did well and did all this stuff. Maybe kind of shifts the tide there a little bit.
Yeah, to me, maybe this is me being like a silly talk show host, but to me that screams like bias, like personal bias in terms of
100%,
where it's like, oh, you didn't do my part of it.
Yes,
I watched your tape all year and I came to your games, and now you're not doing my event. You're not doing my underwear Olympics. Like,
well, it's
relax.
It's a big thing for them. It's a big
is,
part of.
But I think to your point earlier, though, like I would much rather. I know we talked about this last year as this became much bigger part of the evaluation. I'd much rather rely on GPS data than I would on 40. So I don't really, not to say I don't care about the 40, But we're gonna do our second annual crossover podcast in Indy with the Train with the Best podcast, my other podcast, and we'll talk about the difference between training for the combine versus training for football, as Marvin Harrison is like done that in a way that I don't remember any other prospect like outwardly being like, yeah, I'm not training for this stuff, but like you have to train as a track athlete to run a good 40. You don't have to train as a football player.
Right.
GPS data is the data speed wise of a football player. That matters more to me.
I agree. I think that's where teams are at. And I think, like you said, like there still value in the 40? Absolutely. I think it just shows you what kind of explosive athlete they are, right? So like when you look at, I think Quan is a really good example of that, right? He runs like a 4.5 or whatever he ran, but then has a 44-inch vert and like over like a 10.5-foot broad. And you're like, this dude's an explosive son of a gun. And I think it gives you an athletic bias of like, this is the clay that we're working with, and this is what the clay is capable of. And I think with a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., like to your point, like he's a top 5 pick. He's probably going to be a top 5 pick, maybe top 10 pick for sure. Like there's no reason for him to do anything. Like, right. And in some ways, like I think it's probably very wise of him to train football because I think it kind of leads into a situation where he's less likely to get hurt coming into the season, right? I think it's a smart play by him for his future long term. Now, it might in the interim or in the short term hurt his relative draft stock, but we're talking 3, 4, 5 picks. It's not going to be a huge deal either way for him.
Right, for sure. And
if it does it all,
right. There's still a chance he goes 3 or 4, and we'll see. I also think that all these drills are not created equal. And that should also be said. Like the 40 is very technical. We always say that if you're just a random person, I can cut 2/10 off your 40 instantly. I just got to teach you how to start. Correct. Right. So if you and Chris did a great video last year, Chris, or who was in jeans? Were you both in jeans?
I was in jeans. Yeah. It was tough.
Getting down in that 40 start in one of the hallways in the Indianapolis Convention Center. But yeah, no, it's pretty easy to mess that up, right? The technical track start, the 3-point stance start has a huge impact on that total time. And by the way, a lot of positions, the 10-yard split is more important than the 40. And that first 10 yards, if you're slow out of the stance, which really has not a lot to do with football, that could matter a ton. The 5-10-5 is a super technical. Like if you know how to hit the footwork on that, you can put a much cleaner time up versus like, hey dude, jump as high as you can. Like that tells me something about your raw athleticism. Is there technique to a high and a broad or a vert and a broad? Of course, but not as much as the 40 or the 5-10-5. So I think, all these drills are created differently and, or should be weighted differently depending on position, depending on the drill, all that kind of stuff. And I think that, that's why some guys skip certain drills and it's like not worth their time to train for versus others you might get a reading on. And of course it depends on the prospect.
100%. And I think, again, these are pieces, right? And if I'm allocating pieces of the pie, right, like it's, probably close to 80%, maybe 75% film, the Senior Bowl is in that extra 25%, Combine's in there. And it really just gives you like a point of clarity. It's like, oh, this guy's actually not as explosive as I thought he was based on these measurements, right? And so you go back and watch the film and you're like, is this fatal? Yes or no? Like DeJuan Jones is a great example. Like DeJuan Jones ran like a 5.6 or 5.7 40 last year at the Combine, but there was no doubt in my mind he was going to be a great football player because his 10 was pretty good. His on-field drills were pretty good. So like, even though the 40 wasn't like this dramatic event, the other movement stuff kind of
it's a big boy to run 40.
Yeah. But the other movement stuff kind of fleshed out that he is a serviceable athlete. And then you marry that with the film and you're like, I feel good about it. Now, if he goes out and runs a really fast 40, but looks like dog, what on the field, then you kind of say, well, maybe I go back and watch some of the film and some of those issues you had where you're like, oh man, I don't like how he comes out of this 3-point stance, or this angle is a little bit weird, or he gets his feet cut up. Those become more like that's who he is as an athlete, as opposed to that's who he is as a football player. And I think it just kind of is the finishing touch for a lot of coaches. And I think like with the Marvin Harrison thing, as a prospect, and this is probably where I don't think there's a lot to finish. I don't think there's a lot of finishing. There's no questions about it, right? It's just like for example, like Johnny Wilson, the receiver from Florida State, or Keon Coleman. Like people have legitimate questions about their speed, legitimate questions, and their explosive ability. So I want to see them run because I have a question about it, right?
Right. That's
so I think that's where it becomes like a little bit the clarity is important.
All right, you can check out Take Command wherever you get your podcasts. Wrapping up the show next after a quick look at what's trending. Wrapping up here on a Monday. Then I got to go home and pack. That's real talk, Vic. I got to go home and pack because I'm going to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, baby. And I leave at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Do you usually pack light? Are you heavy? What kind of a packer are you?
I'm a pretty efficient packer. This trip's pretty easy. I don't think I need any like super fancy clothes. Like I don't know that we're gonna do a super. I guess I should probably pack in case we go to like a one nice dinner. But this is also admittedly a weird indie trip for me. Very much a business trip. Typically, like the reality of Indianapolis is a lot of people stay out till 4 in the morning, like NFL Combine Indianapolis.
Okay.
Like, you go out, there's coaches and scouts and executives. Like, everyone goes to the same bars, and the later you stay, you know, the better chance you got of talking to somebody important because the herd thins out. And so a lot of folks, a lot of dedicated reporters, their dedication is, I got to stay out till 4 in the morning. That is not me. That is not my one. I'm no longer a reporter. Like, occasionally I do report things, but I'm not at the Combine to get information. I'm at the Combine to maintain and build relationships and do phenomenal radio shows with guests that I can't get if I sit here.
Right.
That's why I go to Indy. But it's also a chance to get FaceTime with a lot of people in the league and catch up with old friends. And, like, there's a lot of benefit of going, right? But I don't need to stay out till 4 in the morning. I also have one of the biggest fitness events of my life this weekend. It's an event called High Rocks. We've talked about it a lot on the show. I'm running it with my wife, and I need to be in peak physical shape for this weekend. So I need to make sure that my sleep is good. And so I will probably have 0 alcoholic beverages, and I will definitely, like, I might not see midnight once. I might try to do one late night, either tomorrow or Wednesday, but I don't want to mess up my sleep schedule. And, like, routine is very important to sleep, and I'm a bit of a nerd and a very particular about my sleep. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not, this is not going to be your typical Indy trip for your boy.
Are you getting older? Do you feel like you're getting older?
I just had my 34th birthday on Friday.
All right,
Vic.
yep.
I am definitely getting older.
I'm 37. I feel like I'm 68.
Well, you don't leave your house some days.
That's true. Because all I do is play Madden.
Yes. Which brings us to, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Vic is such a professional.
Real things.
We're not going to be so this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Yes, the Madden video game / the mention of a video game brings us to today's Real Things, Real People, said into real microphones, courtesy of Chris Fowler on Twitter, play-by-play voice of EA Sports College Football. It's back.
Finally, I can tell you about what's been going on behind closed doors here in the smallest room in the house for about 2 years. Voiceover sessions for EA Sports CFP 25. Microphone, digital recorder, laptop where they have Zoom calls where guys from EA are engineering and directing these sessions. It has been fun. It's been taxing sometimes, monotonous at other times, because everything you could possibly see in a football game, even the mundane plays, I've said into that microphone many, many different ways. Bunch of stuff you'd never see in a real game I've described. You want to punt on second down, try a 71-yard field goal. That's in the game, too, along with the appropriate analysis of those decisions. Your quarterback throws 5 picks in the first quarter or 5 touchdowns. We got you covered there, too, in detail. People have asked, when my team scores a touchdown, will there be appropriate excitement like a real game? Hell yes. EA insists on realism. I sat here in an hour and said, touchdown, Alabama, all the way down to touchdown, Wyoming, along with the version for the team nicknames. It was like a month of touchdown calls in an hour. I needed the T for the voice.
Wow. I will say, Vic, this is not where I think we anticipated this segment going. I am out of practice hosting a radio show. My voice feels wrecked right now. My throat feels awful.
I think that highlight cut off. He did say he has some tea because he spent a month on that.
I'm going to go home and have a cup of tea. A proper cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little splash of milk, a little bit of sugar.
I wonder if he says, touchdown, Prince George's Community College.
I don't think they're in Division I. I don't think.
Man.
Yeah, I think you're out of luck on that one. You told me something fascinating before the show. You've never played EA Sports College Football.
Never did, but I might now.
I spent a lot of time in Dynasty mode, bro.
All right.
We won some national championships. I won a bunch of Heismans. We created players that we then brought into Madden. Teenage years, It's in the game. I was in the game. See you tomorrow from Indianapolis on the Hoffman Show.